Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Football 24/7 here as we kick off day number 2, or at least practice number 2 of the Philadelphia Eagles training camp. I'm your host, Zander Krause. Great to be with you guys this morning in a Football 24/7. We'll talk to my man, John McMullen, for a little bit as he heads down to the NovaCare complex right now. We'll talk about that. We'll recap a little bit of day 1. We'll talk about what to look forward to here in day 2. And I'll give you guys some of my key takeaways from what we learned yesterday at day 1 at camp practice. It's always good when you have a new team to get out on the football field, to get out for the very first time. Even if watch the videos that float around on social media is always a very fun thing to do. So I enjoyed day 1 yesterday. We'll have day 2 today, and we'll have full coverage here on JAKIB Sports all week long and all day long today, and really all through training camp, as you guys know. So hit that like button this morning. Drop your comments down below. Let's go to my main man, John McMullen, who's joining me now for 15 minutes by phone in the car on his way down to NovaCare Complex. Johnny Mac, I got you, brother?
Hopefully. Let's see how it goes today. It's always StreamYard in the car is not the best setup, but we'll do the best we can.
No, it's not. But, John, we've prevailed for many years. We will do it again. It might be working out some kinks in the armor. It's training camp for us too, my friend. How you feeling this morning, John? A Thursday morning, day 2 of practice, day 3 for the Eagles since they reported. What's on your mind, Johnny Mac? How you feeling?
Just getting in. I mean, it's Vic Fangio day, so obviously the defense is the most interesting part of this team with all the change. So it'll be good to get a foundation set by Vic Fangio today. So I think that's going to be really interesting. And then, when we did talk about the on-field stuff, little negativity. I thought it was overblown about Kelee Ringo because I thought he was in the position to make plays. He just didn't make them. And as I said on last night's show, I'd rather have a guy who's, covering well.
Right.
And maybe not making the play at the catch point versus a guy who's not covering well and just getting beat pretty consistently. So, that's why Vic's here, to sort of clean that stuff up. Christian Parker as well, obviously, and Roy Anderson, the cornerbacks coach. So there's some technique issues to clean up, but hopefully you can get there. And that extends to all the young cornerbacks, even Quinyon Mitchell.
Yep, no doubt about it. John, what time is Vic set to speak today before practice? 9:30?
9:40-ish. It's a little bit kicked back from 9:30. Day 1 is, similar to us. Day 1, there's a lot of logistical issues. Plus, you never know if Howie's going to, 90% of the time I said Howie's going to be there. But they never publicize it because there's always a chance he's doing something and he can't do it. So there's a little bit more time because Howie spoke as well.
Yep. So 9:40 today with Vic Fangio. John, what do you want to hear from Vic, man? There's a lot of questions for Vic coming into this training camp, John, with all sorts of new pieces on the defense. There's some injuries, all sorts of different moving parts on the defense this year that we've broken down extensively through the offseason and even yesterday on last night's Birds 365. What do you want to hear from Vic? What are you thinking of asking Vic, John? If the first question comes to you, where are you going?
Well, I don't want the first question because I think the first question's got to be about Jihad Campbell and his health. And I know what's going on there, so I want to lay back and ask about Cooper at safety because I think that's the most interesting part of what happened yesterday. We know he's going to be a 3-down player. We know he's going to be on the field. But if you watch spring practice, he was playing corner before he would move inside the slot, and now he's playing safety before he moves inside the slot. So I think there's a lot of potential ramifications for that. And, not only in the short term, but the long term as well, because we've been talking about a Reed Blankenship extension. Well, what if the long-term plan is for Cooper DeJean to play safety? All of a sudden you have Cooper DeJean and Drew Makuba, potentially your starting safeties, both good coverage players, exactly what Vic Fangio in theory that mucks things up a little bit for Reed. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. And it's not like Vic's going to answer it, and the contract stuff isn't his problem. But, if you frame it the right way and just make it about football, you might give a hint that, he wants Cooper at safety. Or to be fair, it could be just he's looking at both and saying, all right, what's better? And as he mentioned back in the spring, it's more about the other guys than Cooper, because he knows Cooper can play outside. He knows he can play in the slot. He knows he can play at safety. But if you also go back to his spring quotes, he also, specifically, because that wasn't even on anyone's radar at the time, specifically said, I think Cooper could be a really good safety unprompted. So that has come up in my mind a little bit more now that he's actually taking reps there.
Do you think that would be a good use, John, of Cooper DeJean at safety? I feel like he'd be a very good safety, but I don't know if it's maximizing the player's skill set. Now, obviously, different circumstances call for different measures, depending on, as you point out many times this summer, how the other guys are around him. But overall, is that a good use of Cooper DeJean, in your opinion, if he's playing at safety more often?
Yeah, I think that's the best possible usage because he can do so many things. I think the worst is outside corner. That's sort of where, from taking advantage of his versatility, that's where kind of the business of football doesn't align with the on-field product.
Right.
Because the value of outside corners is higher than safeties. But to me, on the field, safeties have a much easier opportunity to make themselves known consistently on the defensive side of the football. If you're an outside corner and they don't look your way, you're not involved in the play. Period. Now, safety, you have an opportunity, depending on the coverage. It might be split field, but even split field is better than quarter of the field, and vice versa. And you could be single high and responsible for everything on the back end. So, that's where the business of football and the actual on-field play doesn't really align. And you could say the same thing about linebacker, because it's much easier for linebackers, as you saw last year with Zach Vaughn. Big-time linebackers, you see it every year with Fred Warner. They make many more plays than the best outside corners because they just have more opportunities.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And Cooper's got that type of skill set where you want him involved in every play. But we'll see. I'm really interested to see what Vic ends up doing with him. John, a couple other notes today before I let you run. I know you're going down there for day 2 today. You'll talk to Vic, and you'll see practice number 2 for the Philadelphia Eagles. John, Kelee Ringo yesterday was a big talk. I think it was way overblown. I'm not at all sounding an alarm at all on Ringo. But what are you looking for today? What type of on-field progress do you think, forget what we want to see, do you think Vic would want to see in order for him to win that job over and feel comfortable with him at cornerback 2?
I just think he's got to come out and show yesterday didn't affect him, and not hang the head, not be depressed, not say woe is me, and I don't think he will. I've seen no evidence, and just get back to getting better each and every day. You're going to get beat at corner, especially when you're playing on the Philadelphia Eagles, and you got to line up against A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith a lot at the time as a starting corner. You're going to get beat at practice. So, I don't think it's going to be a problem for him, but young players, you never know how they're going to handle the mental aspect of the game. And I think, he's been here for 3 years. This is his 3rd year. But he's younger than Quinyon Mitchell. He came in as the youngest player in the entire NFL. So he's still a very young person. And it's a very challenging position. That's why I bring up Slay a lot, and the ability to handle the criticism. And even if you see Slay and his podcast and all that stuff, he would occasionally push back on people who didn't understand, what the coverages were. And because it's a position you get a lot of blame at, because if you're the closest guy to the receiver, I say it all the time, it might not even be your responsibility. You might be making up for somebody else, but all the average fan sees is you're the closest guy to a receiver streaking in the middle of the field or whatever, and you got burned. And sometimes that's the case, sometimes it's not the case.
Right.
But it's a very difficult position from a standard of you're going to get crapped on quite a bit, especially as a young player when you are getting beat on occasion.
Well, John, the other side of it is, I mean, we talk so glowingly about the receivers here in Philly, rightfully so, both fans, reporters, and objective national analysts alike. You get a young corner at practice going to get up against two of the best receivers in football and maybe the best tandem in football. Yeah, they're probably going to get beat in practice. That's all right. I got no worry about it. We'll see how Ringo keeps developing, and we'll keep talking to you, John, about the way he's developing. John, somebody I forgot to talk to you about yesterday. We mentioned him on the show, but we didn't actually dive into your thoughts on it, is Jordan Davis. I mentioned he looks chiseled back at camp, man. I mean, he looks like he really does look good. Now, I don't know what that means, how much. I mean, I care a lot more about what he does on the football field than the way he looks, but I did think it was a very positive sign. What were your takeaways or your thoughts on Jordan Davis showing up to camp looking like that, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, I know. I feel like this has been a story with Jordan Davis since he got here, and there's always the talk of conditioning and he's always verbalized the need to be in better shape. But he mentioned back in the spring about falling in love with the Peloton, and that was the sort of the gauge to get him a little bit better shape last year at the end of the season, and he's continued that. So hopefully it's a positive. It's always a give and take with run stuffers. It's like, well, they got to be big and strong.
Right.
But in the case of Jordan Davis, I think everyone looks at him and says, well, he could be more than just a run stuffer. And they bring up that Dexter Lawrence comparison a lot of times, which I think is unfair, because I mentioned that crazy stat about Dexter Lawrence. Over the last couple seasons, he's got 90 pressures as a nose tackle, and number 2 is like 27. So he's a rare player, but I think a lot of people, because of his physical ability, think Jordan Davis could be that style of player, and you want to get him closer to being that style of player. I don't know if he's ever going to get to that level, but you want him closer. And I've always pointed to Vita Vea or somebody like that in his prime. And this year it's more important because he needs to play a lot in the 4-man fronts after you lose Milton Williams. So it's not a situation where you can just take him off the field all the time. You could do it sometimes as a rotational, but you can't do it all the time. So he's going to have to play more. And when he does play more, and you saw a little bit of that in the playoffs, when it is a pass, he's got to create a little bit of more of a pass rush, and he was able to do that at times. So I think there's a lot of positive thoughts on Jordan Davis potentially developing into more. But, we've been through this before with the conditioning, and until you see it on the field, it's hard to say, all right, it's 100% better.
Right. This is an interesting one. It's almost a little bit of a catch-22, John, where it's like, Jordan looks great, but unless his role changes and they use him more in the 4-man front, you could maybe argue it's not all good that he lost that weight. Now, I know the conditioning is obviously a big thing. It's going to be great to have him more in shape. I just wonder if, hey, maybe the Eagles said to him, we're going to use you more in 4-man fronts next year. We're not going to be able to we're not going to run as many 5-man fronts because we don't have, as much depth. We want you to be more versatile. And now he shows up looking like this. He's certainly more built to be a a 3 technique or a 4 technique looking like that than he was last year. You agree?
Well, I think, for him, it's more of, I'll never see him as a 3 technique because he's just too big and too tall. His length is a problem too because
Yeah, right. You
need a little bit more leverage to be a really tremendous pass rusher from the interior. So, I'm not worried about that because you have Jalen Carter, but he's definitely gonna have to play more in 4-man fronts. Definitely. No, there's no debate about that. And the Eagles, to be honest, had hoped that he would be doing that more anyway, from day one. Because when they drafted him, they thought he had more upside as a pass rusher than he's shown to date. But we'll see. I've said all the time, if you have better pass rushers like last year, well, why do you want them on the field? Just then you have to take McMullen Williams off the field when you're rushing the passer, or even Moro Ojomo. And the same thing might happen this year with Moro, which is an interesting. I do want to talk about Moro as well today, because he was a player that really showed some signs last season. But every time Vic would talk about him, he would mention how undersized he was. So I want to hear his take there. I'm sure the Eagles gave him instructions to get a little bit bigger over the offseason, because they gave those instructions to Jalen Hunt on the outside. So probably the same thing with Milton Williams, with Moro Ojomo, but it's going to be interesting because, those 2 guys, Jordan Davis and Moro Ojomo, really got to step up on the interior of the defensive line.
Yeah, no doubt about it. John, I think one of the things about Jordan Davis that is not tough to comprehend, but when you think about the skill set that he has, and I know people talked about how fast he ran the 40 at the con, and I'm not talking about that, but he is a super freaking athletic big dude, which would make me feel like, on the surface, without ever seeing him play, which I have, he should be a pretty good versatile defensive tackle. Now, he hasn't quite been that, but he also hasn't been asked to do it as much as he might be asked to do it this year. I have some sense of confidence that he could do that. Now, I don't know what you think of that, or if you think that's reasonable or pie in the sky thinking, but he is an athletic dude, man, and he moves well for his size. I would think that he does possess somewhere in there, John, to be a more versatile DT. We'll see if Vic uses him like that this year.
Well, that's the whole reason he got drafted where he got drafted.
Right.
Because, he was one of the most athletic 6'6", 350-pound people that ever existed at the combine. So that was the whole thought process. But, if it were that easy, you just pick the most athletic guys, and they would turn into the best players. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. More likely, they're going to be somewhere in the middle of that. And that's where I think Jordan has settled into. And he's still young enough to where I think he could get better. And sometimes, as we said, you saw last year with Alex late in the season, even more so with Nolan Smith late in the season. Half of it, is you need the opportunity. And I think now he's going to get the opportunity. So maybe it's as simple as that. Sometimes you got to wait your turn. Milton Williams had to wait his turn until Fletcher Cox retired, and he hit a home run. Now Milton's gone, and they need more help in 4-man fronts, so maybe Jordan Davis gets that opportunity. Not maybe, he's going to get it, and maybe he runs with it.
We'll see what ends up happening there. It's Vic Fangio Day, John, which is always a very fun day at training camp because we get to listen to the great Vic Fangio, and he always gives us a little bit more than all the other people that talk, so I'm looking forward to it. Johnny Mac, your final thought before I let you run, brother. Got a long day ahead of you, and we appreciate all the work you're doing, the insight you're giving us. Your final thought here this morning on Football 24/7.
If you're on 42 in Jersey, please get off and let me get through. I'm joking. But yeah, I'm stuck in traffic, so there's my final thought.
Yeah, I heard one big motor going by. I'm like, uh-oh, did Johnny Mac upgrade the car to a big V8? I don't know who that was that ripped by. Johnny Mac, thank you, brother. Appreciate you doing it. We'll talk to you this evening on Birds 365.
All right, thank you.
All right, there's Johnny Mac. John McMullen joining us live here from the car on his way down to the NovaCare complex. Great segment there. And it's Vic Fangio Day, everybody, as Johnny Mac talked about. That's a fun one. That's always a good one. Vic always gives you a little bit more than everybody else, and that's a good thing. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Vic has to say. And